when we show the world at large. And then there's the truth.
Hello lovelies, this is gonna be an e-begging video, but wait. I'm gonna try and make it more useful and interesting to people. I'm gonna talk about a bit, you know, what I do, where I get money, experiences I've had with different things, so advice maybe it might be useful to some of you. You never know. And then I'll end with my story, I guess, of how I got to this point, my sob story. So it's not just going to be me begging for money, but if you leave right now, I won't hold it against you. Okay? Alright. I have a Patreon. Until recently, that was doing pretty well. I was almost making enough to justify the daily videos that I've been doing. And then, for no explicitly given reason, a bunch of people stopped supporting me. I think it's just their life situation and stuff. It's not anything about me. But this is a little bit odd, given that the new drug regimen I'm on for my depression and so on has meant that I've been vastly more productive over the last 3 months or so, to the point where I'm starting to burn out a bit. But yeah, I haven't released that much stuff to people in a very long time, and yet as my output has increased, the support I've gotten for that output has decreased, and I only ever got people to donate monthly. I didn't do it per video or anything like that, and it's not just videos that I do, as we'll get to in a minute. I need, really, in order to be able to justify the amount of time and effort that I put into these videos, and people do seem to appreciate them, I do need to be making about $200 US a month from doing it, through a combination of advertising and donations. And as we all know, advertising has gone to pot, and these donations have dropped. So I know somewhere between 100 to 300 people regularly watch my videos. If you can spare just $1 a month to my Patreon, that would help an enormous amount and make all this more justifiable and worthwhile. It's not at the point where I'm going to drop my output yet, but that's a possibility in the future. And it's a shame, because I feel that making these videos is good for me. It's better for communicating with people. You can see my body language, you can hear my tone of voice, and all the rest of it. It's just better. It cuts through a lot of the problems that exist with internet communication, a lot of the reasons for misunderstandings that exist. So I would like to keep doing it, but I need to make more money from it to justify doing it. And we all know that advertising has taken a big hit. So if you want to support me, you can donate to my Patreon. You can buy the tabletop RPG material that I create. You can buy the books that I've written and encourage me to write more. Yeah, that's about it. You can buy t-shirts and merch and so on as well. That's another option. Or you can just donate if the whimsy hits you at some point to think, I like that grim chap, he's a solid fellow, I'm going to give him a few bucks. You can always PayPal me. All the information for all of these things will be down below this video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, go to YouTube, find me, subscribe, and Robert's your mother's brother. If you don't have money, if you can't spare even $1 a month, there are other ways that you can support me. The YouTube algorithm is horrible, so exposure is a lot harder to get if you're a smaller channel or if you deal with difficult topics, which are the ones that interest me. So liking, sharing, particularly sharing, is incredibly helpful. Anything that brings new eyes in, new subscribers, recommendations to other people, recommendations on other videos, you know, things like that, they all help a great deal. But sharing in particular, bringing eyes, bringing people. Subscriptions on social media and so on help bypass the problem with the algorithm. Less so on Facebook, which has its own algorithmic woes, but on Twitter, on Minds, Steemit, I'm also on. All of these places, if you can follow me and support me there, it all helps. It all accumulates and aggregates, and the more you share and comment on and like my content, the better it performs, basically. I have invested in some search optimization tools and so on, vidIQ, which is quite useful, quite helpful, and has helped me get more eyes on my videos, but not enough. Essentially, if I'm just going on advertising, given the fucking state of YouTube, I need 10 times as many subs and viewers. And that doesn't seem likely in any particularly short time frame. So there you go. If you want to support me, those are the ways. So let's talk about things that I do for money, how they've worked out for me, and how you might, maybe, possibly, perhaps be able to tap into those. Right then, things I do that make money, sort of. Well, first of all, there's YouTube. YouTube doesn't make me any money. If I'm lucky, I make what it costs me to pay for the subscription service to the tool that lets me get, or helps me to get, enough hits to raise enough money to pay for the tool that gets me enough hits. So that's the kind of situation there. If you're looking to make money on YouTube and you are remotely controversial, or you're interested in news and politics, if you want to use it as a platform to talk about things that are actually interesting, then you're not going to make any money off YouTube itself. You can use YouTube as a platform to gather support for other things that you do, but YouTube itself, no. Of course, I have a number of issues that make it much more difficult for me to make money on YouTube. I'm male, I'm not female. I'm not already wealthy. People for some reason like to spy on people who have wealthy, weird, outrageous lifestyles and who are otherwise thick as pig shit. I have principles. That's a massive problem if you're trying to make money online, particularly in YouTube. And I have crippling social anxiety. Yeah, this is basically the way that I am able to be social, but it's still difficult. So, you know, story time, bearing your emotions and so on can be quite tricky and grueling. This video, for example, is a bit tricky and grueling. And of course, I'm British, and we tend to be reticent, and we tend to understate things and underplay things, and so on. So, but anyway, the point is, YouTube itself, not a great way to make money. Even with breakout videos and so on, it's just, yeah, not worth it. Like I said a little bit earlier, basically I need 10 times as many subscribers, 10 times as many views before YouTube becomes even self-sustaining for me, you know, to the point of treading water. That would be if I was just doing YouTube itself. So, alright, what else do I do? I write tabletop role-playing games, supplements and support for them, and I write books and so on, mostly digital publishing and print on demand. Can you make money at that? Well, on a good year, I make minimum wage doing that. Sometimes it's been more in the past, sometimes it's been less. Nowadays, it's pretty reliably around, you know, bare minimum wage. But that's not taking into account a lot of cost factors and so on. And it's difficult if you're a one-man band like I am, in that while you save on overheads and so on, there's only so much stuff you can put out and maintain any reasonable level of quality, especially if you happen to have other issues. Can you make money? Can you make a living doing online publishing, digital publishing? Yes, but there's a great amount of luck to it. Now, I was lucky in that I already had something of a profile from working in print RPGs during the transition period, with a lot of middle tier companies. It's a very different thing now. And the great thing about digital online publishing and print on demand is that there's a really low bar to entry, and the really terrible thing about print on demand and digital publishing is that there's a really low bar to entry. So the market is flooded with stuff, and in accordance with Sturgeon's law, 90% of it is crap. You have to find a way to stand out, and if you don't have a prior reputation, I think it'd be very difficult to get into that. I'm not trying to discourage you, just don't quit your day job, I guess is what I'm saying, and think of positive ways that you can draw attention to what you're making. So there's that. There's Patreon. My experience with Patreon is bumpy. Yeah, I was doing fairly well on it. It was almost enough to justify what I do here, and then people have dropped out. If you only have a small amount of people who are supporters on Patreon, then it's very bumpy as people come and go because they can afford it or they can't afford it, they lose their job or whatever else, or they started supporting you because of a particular controversy or issue and then discover that your political views aren't exactly in alignment with theirs or whatever else. Until you've got a good body of Patreon supporters, it's not reliable. There's just no way it's going to be a reliable income of any kind until you reach a certain level of critical mass. And like a lot of things, you'll find that the more support you get, the more likely people are to support you. So it's important, particularly at the start, I think, to get friends and family to chip in there, because then that will look like you're a horse worth backing. It seems counterintuitive, but it's the case. Yeah, if you're already making money, it's easier to make money. If you're already got a lot of patrons, then people can see that, oh, well, this person must be worth submitting to. They must produce stuff that's worth paying for, and so that snowballs. And so it goes. Alternatives to Patreon. There was maker support, then they got boned by the single point of failure that exists across all of these kinds of companies and elsewhere, in that their payment processor refused to work with them because there was some edgy content and so on being supported on maker support. So don't go there. My money's still frozen there. I don't know when, if ever, it's going to be undone, and don't bother supporting anyone on maker support until they sort it out. There's a few other alternatives like Patreon and so on, but there's no good service. Patreon is being forced to censor and control content, in part because of PR, in part because of payment processors, and the story's going to be the same wherever you go. That kind of segues into cryptocurrency. So Minds is an alternative social platform that is ready to dip its toe into the cryptocurrency waters. Of the alternative social media sites, I would say Minds is the better one. But there is a problem with all of these alternatives in that the first people to jump ship and move across to these platforms from the standard platforms like Facebook and Twitter and so on are obnoxious, horrible people for the most part. Conspiracy theorists, political extremists, those sorts of people. When an alternative pops up, they're some of the first people to move over and infest it, because they're the first people to be censored from standard platforms. But if you care about privacy, if you want an alternative, Minds is pretty good. My experiences with cryptocurrency are not fabulous. There's Minds and there's Steemit. Steemit has a very primitive interface. You can blog on it. You get Steam coins, essentially, which can be traded for other currency. The whole crypto thing is pretty impenetrable and technical, and it's rife with scam artists and all kinds of other problems, but it is a way that dodges around the payment processors and the censorship that they inflict, at least for the time being. That is the only thing that really makes crypto worth dipping your toe into. The wild fluctuations and everything else make it unreliable. And while I've been putting quite a bit of stuff on Steemit, very few things get very much traction. You see certain people getting hundreds of dollars worth of Steam coins every post they put out, other people like me getting nothing, and yet there's no easy way to see the difference between the two. So yeah, you could try that. I haven't really made any money off any of that yet. I'm still kind of vaguely keeping it going, but I'm disheartened. I see crypto as a good way of getting around censorship, and that's basically the only value that it has to me. But the scam artists and the technicalities and everything mean it's not really that viable for a lot of people, I don't think. And I sell t-shirts now. T-shirts and posters and things. Now, I used to use Cafe Press for years. Nobody bought a fucking thing off Cafe Press. It was a complete waste of my time and energy. Now, more recently, Teespring had popped up as being a good site to work with. The markup, you get a good amount of money. The print quality is good. The t-shirt quality is good to great, depending which level t-shirt you choose to get. Overall, the actual process of setting up t-shirts and posters and things on that site is pretty smooth. The problem is that they tend to knee-jerk at censorship, or the mere possibility that something might cross over even slightly with someone's IP. So I have the Saga of the B&D t-shirts. So D&D is Dungeons and Dragons, B&D is Bondage and Domination. Dungeons exist in both, so I thought I'd do a satirical t-shirt, B&D, with a ball gag wearing dragon for the ampersand, and we have the best dungeons. Went up, sold a few. I was pretty pleased with the whole process and the fact that I sold a couple almost straight away. If you've got a good design, it goes well. And then there was some kind of claim, but it wasn't put through properly. I couldn't get anyone on the other end to talk to me like a human being. They wouldn't even tell me what was wrong. I changed it up, re-uploaded it, different design. Same thing happened again, but this time I got angry and annoyed, and I kept pushing at them and pushing at them and pushing at them until an actual human being, rather than a sales drone, looked at it for me and it was reinstated. But yeah, it's a risky process, and that took days of me bugging them. But there aren't really any that useful alternatives. Spreadshirt's no good, for example. The long and the short of it is that no single thing that you do will make you enough money to live on, unless you're incredibly lucky. So diversify, spread what you do out, and then maybe in some kind of combination you'll do okay. Or do it as a hobby to supplement your main income, in which case, might be a nice source for beer money. You shouldn't support me because of my sob story or whatever else. You should support me because of the things that I do, the things that I make, and that, not because you feel pity for me for whatever reason. Okay, this is just to kind of let you know how I got to the state that I'm in for new viewers and so on who don't necessarily know. So the main thing is that I suffer from severe depression with bouts of suicidal depression, along with pretty bad anxiety that's gotten worse rather than better, and dependency disorder, which isn't as bad as it sounds. That's very mild, but it was part of my diagnosis. So I'm on pills for that, which can make creativity difficult. This latest combination of pills makes the anxiety worse, but makes the depression much more manageable, so I'm able to work a lot harder, a lot longer, to concentrate more, and so on, but at a cost in terms of sleepiness and other side effects. I tend to get a lot of side effects from any drug that I take, legal or illegal. So by and large I try and avoid them, except when I have to take them, which I do for this. Now, what I was diagnosed about over 10 years ago now, and have been in various forms of treatment and so on for it since, but it's persistent. So this is my life now. I am stuck with it, and looking back I can see that I was suffering from it earlier than that, but just didn't think that's what it was, and it was triggered by life events more in the past rather than just being something that happened. And I got over it, but the cycles are much tighter now, and most of the time I'm not really okay. I've got a good handle on my illness. I can work around it, I can anticipate it, I can feel it coming on, I can feel it going away. I've got a handle on it, but it's still hard, it's still very difficult, and it's very tiring, and it even has physical symptoms similar to the kind of leadenness and so on in your limbs when you get flu and so on. So I have a long-term debilitating mental illness. I am a fucking mentalist. Now recently I finally, after a year of wrangling, started getting some financial support. There's another thing that's still stuck in committees and tribunals. We'll see how that goes. It's not much, but it does help a massive amount. It has made a huge difference to my quality of life to get this small amount of financial assistance. But it also comes with a cost. And that cost is, I don't know what the environment for people who are on disability or similar benefits where you are is like. I don't know what it's like where you are. But here in the UK there is a presumption in a lot of the newspapers and amongst large sections of the public that if you're on any kind of assistance that you're a skiver, a scrounger, you don't deserve it, you're not one of the deserving poor. This is particularly the case if you have an invisible illness like the one that I have. People think you're faking it, or you can just snap yourself out of it, or whatever else. And I have a very hard time accepting that I don't have control over this thing that's wrong with me. But I feel that constant weight of judgment all the time, from the television, from the newspapers, from the internet, from trolls, from everywhere. Some of it you can ignore, some of it you can't. But I do feel this pressure to not stay on it. That is my goal now. That's partially why I'm making this video, is that I want to get away and off of those benefits. I want to get to a position where I'm much more self-supporting and independent. These payments have given me more independence, more financial security, more stability. I can afford to spend a small amount of money on myself now, which I'm trying to do in a way to invest in the future and to make me feel better about myself. But ultimately, the goal is to get off that. I don't think I'm a scrounger or anything, but I don't want to be in that position. So that's the kind of mental health side. Now, at school, I was your stereotypical nerd picked on by most people. Didn't really fit in anywhere other than with a close cadre of friends. When I went to college, I moved away to a place where pretty much nobody knew me, and that allowed me to blossom and flower into the man you see before you today. But during the time I was at college, my parents split up, and I hesitate to mention that because it tends to upset my father, who I know watches a lot of my material. It's just, this is just matter-of-fact stuff. It's not casting judgment on anybody or anything, so shh. That was difficult, and I was suddenly thrust into the position of being kind of the man of the house and the rock everyone else relied upon and so on, and I think that's when my depression really started to take hold and kick in, because I was putting everybody else before me. I interviewed for universities, couldn't find a course that suited me, and was kind of listless and drifting for a while. Eventually I got a job doing technical support for a company which for now will remain nameless, and from doing the technical support there, they started up a web department. I moved into that and did graphics and layouts and things for that. But that department was constantly undercut, under budgeted, and the guy who was in charge of the department was embezzling money from it and then blaming it on the department. So we all got fired at the same time. Following that, I was out of work and on job seekers allowance for about 18 months. I live in the sticks. I was forced to move back to the sticks from the town where I was living after losing my job. And it's quite isolating out here. It's difficult for people to make the journey to see me. It's difficult for me to make the journey to see other people, particularly since I wasn't driving for a lot of the time because there hadn't been any need while I was living in town. And things just got entrenched, and there wasn't anywhere for me to find work. I was either overqualified or underqualified. There weren't the kind of jobs that were suitable for me. Most people wouldn't see me even for interview or reply to CVs or anything. Eventually I just kind of gave up and decided to work for myself and set up my company and started producing RPGs with an initial £500 investment from family. That went reasonably well. I had some freelancing work that I've been doing on the side while I was working for this company, and that translated well into producing my own material and selling it. Then various controversies started to hit. The social fabric of the gaming community started to change and become very toxic and hostile and nasty, and to have no real sense of fun or proportion. People always started casting the worst aspersions about things that you'd done, the worst interpretations, and so on. And because I'm dedicated to free expression and to principle, because I fought the satanic panic when I was a teenager, because I'd liked heavy metal and seen the issues people had with that and all this other nonsense, I, rightly I think, pegged this shift as a new moral panic, like happened to horror comics, like happened to RPGs in the past as being satanic and whatever. This was around 2010 or so. A little bit later than that, I think, I wrote an article about the Lara Croft controversy, about the implied sexual violence in one of the cutscene trailers or whatever. And people blew up at that in a way that made absolutely no sense to me. Nobody looked at the content of what was being said, replied to the substance of it. Instead, I was accused of all sorts of horrible things, and there were attempts to boycott or ensure that I never got employment again. And since then, that has just gotten worse and worse and worse. Every time I think it hits a peak, it happens again to somebody else. From that point on, basically, I was persona non grata to a certain section of people. And this only deepened when I participated in Gamergate. Now, to an extent, being principled and speaking out these things has been helpful and useful in that a lot of people have supported me because of that. But that support tends to fade away, and it's the people who have a real problem with you that are like the Energizer Bunny of hate. They just keep going. Everything you do, they pick over for something they can have a go at you about. They're constantly telling people, even when you're trying to do something good, that you're this awful human being rather than the principled human being that you are. And the people that support you tend to fade away. They've got less motivation. So while in the short term the controversies were good for money, and I would say this is a warning to other people making bank off controversies, the people that hate you persist. The people that support you gradually drift away, and you no longer have that support. So that's hurt me and damaged me. I'm really at the point now where I have no choice but to continue being my own boss. I don't think with my anxiety at the levels it's at, I could cope with an office environment or a regular job, even if there was something that was available for the skills that I have. So I have to make the best of this. I have to make this into something that can support me. My activities, my writing, my videos, all of that has to pay off. I have no choice. and so I'm asking for your help to get me to a point where this is properly sustainable and something I can do and be independent and take care of myself. And that's where I want to get. That's my story. Nerd, controversy, difficulty, depression. If you got any questions or anything, please fire them away in the box below, or if you want to ask anonymously, I have an Ask FM Grimmachu, I think. You can go and ask me there anonymously, or troll me, which some people do, after all, love to do. Normal service will be resumed as soon as possible. I hope some of what I've said today has been useful and interesting, rather than just miserable and begging. Zang.
Just remember what old Jack Burton does when the earth quakes and the poison arrows fall from the sky and the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, Jack Burton just looks that big old storm right square in the eye and he says, "Give me your best shot, pal. I can take it."